Good afternoon, Robert Scribbler, and I'm here with you with another Friday for Future episode for the OBX Wave Report. And for this episode, we're going to talk about the storm surge poles. And if you see that right there, that is a storm surge pole, and they are all, hello, hey guys, they are all up and down the Outer Banks, and it's there to indicate what kind of flooding you would see during a hurricane and typically during a major hurricane. And this pole is right here at Jeanette's Pier on the high dune mark. And the high dune mark here on Nag's Head is one of the higher elevations on the island. So this is actually one of the higher elevations on the island. And during a major hurricane, that is like a category 3, 4, or 5 hurricane, you would likely see flooding in the range of the blue line, which is 1 to 3 feet above the base of this pole, all the way up to the orange line, which is, each line is a 3-foot increment, which is about 9 feet above the base. So like for the worst category 5 hurricanes, possibly up to 9 feet of flooding here on top of the dune line, which right here where I'm standing right now is probably about 7 feet above sea level. I don't have an official benchmark for sea level, but just visualizing it, it appears we're about 7 feet above sea level right here. So the thing is, with climate change, and for our Friday for Future focus, the oceans out here are rising at the rate of almost 5 millimeters a year for the Outer Banks. And so that's half a centimeter of sea level rise every year. And so every year, the potential flooding impact from a severe hurricane or a strong hurricane in the category 3, 4, or 5 range gets a little bit worse. And it's interesting, you talk about like a little bit of sea level rise can have a lot of impact. In some regions of the world, even just centimeters to inches can have major impacts on the coastline and coastal erosion. And your coastline and beaches and dunes are your main defense against storm surge in the event of a hurricane. And for the Outer Banks, we have faster sea level rise than the global average, and much of the Outer Banks is very low. So we already have a vulnerability to powerful hurricanes and hurricanes in general. And with the sea level rise on top of that, the impacts are compounding over time. And we are starting to get nuisance flooding here in the Outer Banks during times of astronomical high tide, when the moon and the sun and the earth line up in a certain way that produces a seasonal high tide. And it takes less and less intense storms to produce flooding here. And then in addition, the stronger storms for the North Atlantic are becoming more frequent and more intense. And we've seen a doubling of the frequency of category 3, 4, and 5 hurricanes in the North Atlantic over recent decades. And we have more fuel in the form of warmer than normal ocean temperatures that provide that extra atmospheric lift that helps to feed cyclonic systems. So the urgency to transition to clean energy, and we're going to talk about clean energy in the form of wind, water, solar, and electric vehicles. And we've got an electric vehicle right here in the background, this Tesla Model 3, which is the one I use. And don't let anyone tell you that electric vehicles don't help reduce carbon emissions. They absolutely do, and they're completely viable transportation. I drive an electric vehicle both for my personal transport on long road trips and for Uber, which is more intense form of driving than your typical form of driving. I've got no problems with the electric vehicle. In fact, the electric vehicle is a dream when it comes to economy, particularly fuel economy. I've saved hundreds and hundreds of dollars over the recent fuel price spikes due to my increased driving frequency. And then in addition, we need wind, water, and solar clean energy sources, as well as batteries for backup. And here at Jeanette's Pier, we've got some wind turbine posts, and the government of North Carolina needs to get its act together and put those turbine blades back on those wind turbine posts out here. In all honesty, everyone here on the Outer Banks needs to have solar panels on their roofs, needs to be getting energy from wind, water, and solar. We need to have a plan to do that. This is not meant to shame, it's just meant to inspire a sense of urgency. These are the things that we need to get done, and we need to get them done fast. Now let's talk a little bit about. I want to talk a little bit about these storm surge maps, and this is kind of a cool thing they do, weather and science-wise here. Hopefully you guys can see these storm surge maps. So the Dare County and the weather.gov over for the National Hurricane Center and the National Weather Service, and NOAA and a bunch of other contributors have placed these flood maps here. And the flood maps show the potential storm surge flooding above ground during a major hurricane. And if you look at this, we're just gonna zoom in here. And so for large regions of the Outer Banks, for a major hurricane, this would be probably like a worst case scenario style impact for a category 3, 4, or 5 hurricane. You see large areas with above 9 feet of groundwater flooding, even larger, more extensive areas of 6 to 9 foot flooding, and still very significant areas of 3 to 6 foot flooding. And then the high ground areas are getting 1 to 3 foot flooding, with very few areas that are spared in a major hurricane. And this just shows you how low-lying the Outer Banks is and how vulnerable the Outer Banks is both to sea level rise and to severe storms. And climate change brings both. It brings both sea level rise through the melting of glaciers and through the thermal expansion. When you heat the ocean, it expands. The water expands. So thermal expansion also causes sea level rise. And on top of that, you get more severe storms due to those warmer than normal ocean surface temperatures and that added convective lift. And so you get your peak potential storm energy is bumped up, and the potential for severe weather is increased. And folks in California right now are experiencing that, and we hope that that some of the models which show a potential for abatement later this month do come through, but there's no abatement, unfortunately, for California in the short term. We got a barrage of 3 storms coming in through there. But over here on the other coast, on the Outer Banks, we have our own issues as well, even though right now we're not experiencing extraordinarily extreme weather, although we did have some severe thunderstorms last night. And across the southeast, we had a rash of tornadoes, which was pretty intense as well. So thank you for joining me for Friday for Future edition of the OBX Wave Report. Please join me in trying to accelerate the clean energy transition. Please listen to the climate scientists. Please listen to your climate activists and your clean energy advocates. And thank you for joining me once again.